Mike, test, test.
As we talk about this, let me get this thing on. Yeah, looking back at 2020, we're going to kind of recap a lot of where we ended on things. But before we do that, we are going to share a lot of good news and a lot of the good things that God is doing. But we wanted to take a minute just to acknowledge that we know that this has been a really hard year for a lot of people and that there's been a lot of challenges. So we don't want to paint this as like all sun and roses and like everything's been great. Like we really miss doing life together as a whole community. And I know if some of you are watching from home that you have felt really disconnected from Horizon this season. We have felt your loss, and like we really miss doing life all together. We miss your presence. I was texting with someone the other day that I just hadn't seen in like 4 months because of this, and it just made me like, oh man, I miss them so deeply, and I think we're all feeling that. We're all feeling that loss. There's been a lot of people who are struggling in the midst of this. So if you're in a place where you're struggling, like we want to be in that with you. We know COVID's been hard both in job-wise and been hard for some people who've gotten sick and just hard with the separation. So we want to take a moment and say this has been a really difficult year, and we know that, and we acknowledge that, and we miss being together in the midst of that. And community has felt different. It's just felt different this year, and like in the midst of everything, like I know we're making the most of what we have, but it has felt really different, and there's just been a lot of absence in that. But what we're going to focus on right now is the fact that there's a lot to celebrate despite all of that, right? Like all those things are true. None of this disqualifies all that from being true. If you're home, we're not like all yah rah, we don't miss you. We do miss you. But in the midst of that, we're trying to notice the things that God has been doing that have been just reflective of how great He is and how He's looked out for us in the middle of something that nobody wants to go through again. Like we're ready for this. We're ready to turn the page on this, like Beth was saying in her sermon. But God has still been providing. And if you missed the Testimony Sunday, I would urge you to go back and check that out. God is still moving in individual lives. He's moving in powerful ways. He's moved in community. He's brought new people in community in the midst of this, which is crazy. Like, we've had people find link groups and find community and find friends in the middle of a pandemic. That's amazing. It's just amazing how God has done that. So He's still been moving in powerful ways, and God has been providing for the church financially, which has been an incredible blessing. Like, we are so grateful that for some of you at home, maybe you haven't even been here in 8 months and you have tithed regularly. We have felt that. We have been able to give money out the door to people who are in need in amazing ways, and we've been able to keep moving forward with our vision in the middle of all this, and that we do not take that lightly. Thank you to all of you for your continued contributions, for the fact that you can faithfully give in the midst of the fact that maybe you're not even receiving what you normally receive from Horizon, but you have been faithful in committing to give to it, and that we are so grateful for that. We are so grateful for that because it allows us to kind of keep moving forward. We are on pace to meet our budget in the midst of a pandemic. Like, that's unbelievable. We had set the budget high. We thought we were being aggressive. We were really asking God to meet us in favor in a way that He hadn't. This is the highest budget that we ever had this past year, and we're on pace to meet it here in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you. Round of applause to yourselves at home. Yeah, that is amazing news. So we do not take that lightly. We know that's come a great sacrifice, and thank you. Thank you for your commitment to Horizon. The 2020 budget was $375,000. I was around when our budget was like under $100,000, and we struggled to get it, right? Like, so like, this is not, this is amazing blessing. God has really grown the church in astronomical ways, but one of the biggest ways that He has grown the church is financially. And to be in the conversations that we're in about buying space, adding staff, like, we don't take this lightly. Thank you for what you've contributed to make this possible. We were able to give away $37,500 this year, like just to people in need, to our organizations, the partners that we work with. And on top of that, We had another extra fund of $5,900 that went out just for COVID relief, for people who were having a hard time paying bills, for people who were struggling from just a loss of a job in a period. Like, this has been amazing that we have been able to bless people in the midst of something that most people are shrinking back and able to do less. God has given us abundance that we've been able to share, and we are really, really grateful for that. We've been able to do some building upgrades in the middle of this. For those of you who have not noticed, and maybe you haven't been to the church in a while, Lake Lutheran is now like Lake Puddle, which is fantastic. Yeah. So, amazing. As for those of you who don't know, when it would rain really, really heavily, the rain would come up so high that it would form like a lake that you would have to drive your car through. If you were walking, you tried to go up through the mud, and you'd usually fall, and it was just a disaster. Like, the worst way to welcome a new person. Here's a canoe, meet us on the other side, right? But we were able to, and bigger than that, it was a danger to really flood. Like, there was one day right before we got the work done where the water was right up to the step, and it was about to go in and ruin all the flooring on the main level, which it did 8 years ago. And so this is something that we had to really, really get done, and it's done. The water drains, it runs around the building and out. The company did a great job with it. They even helped level out the area so that's more wheelchair accessible on this side. So we are still making strides on these things in the midst of all that's going on. The year before we got the heat upgraded, so we are going to save tons of money on the utilities because we now have split duct systems in a lot of the rooms, so the kids won't be freezing when you come back. So yeah, this is all good news. This is all good news. And First Lutheran has been generous with us to let us make some upgrades that then count off of our purchase price, and we've worked in such a familial way that we are making upgrades on a building that we don't even own yet, which does not normally happen. So all this has been great. We have been able to add staff. Last year was Katie, and then it was transitioned to Kara, and when we brought Kara on, we expanded to 30 hours, which was a huge step, and we've used every one of those hours and more than that. So we have not given her a shortage of things to do with the things that we've asked. So that has, again, been a huge blessing for her to be able to help with this, and what we're going to need her for as we start to buy this building and all the needs that's going to kind of be that are going to come from owning a space are going to be incredible. So all this happened in 2020, and we are so grateful that we didn't skip a beat financially as we kept taking these steps forward. We didn't have to struggle with, do we do this or do we not do this because of just not being able to make ends meet. No, we were able to keep moving forward. Nobody had to reduce salaries. We didn't have to let anyone go. We've been able to kind of reassign the kids people to do different work, and they've done great things about putting out videos and making things accessible for kids at home. We have not had to let anyone go in the midst of this, and that has been an amazing blessing. They've been able to continue to serve in powerful ways. So as we looked at 2021, we have no reason to believe that this is not a year that we keep moving forward. And that we're going to kind of tell you the exciting things that we're going to be doing this year, and it's going to require a little bit more of everybody as we continue to kind of gain ground in this. But we're taking bigger steps in 2021. We're increasing our budget to $450,000, and you might say, that's a bit of a jump, and it is. Now I'm going to say a couple things about that. The main reason for that is that we are purchasing a building. That is not a small task. That is a big deal. If any of you have ever bought a house, there's a lot that comes with that. So we are moving from, come on in, guys, come on in, grab a seat. In the purchase of First Lutheran, there's a lot of big things that go into that. We go from paying rent to paying a mortgage. We go from chipping in on utilities to owning all the utilities. When the snow plowing comes, we are the ones who pay the snow plows, right? All these things start to happen with ownership. If the roof leaks, we replace it, right? These are the kinds of things that we are now taking on when we buy a building. So we are kind of budgeting in that. Now let me say, just in advance, we have been saving for this for years and for years and for years. So this is not a reckless decision. We have a high burn rate if we need to, that we could really sustain this growth without increased giving. But I would challenge us not to do that. I'm going to get there. But this is not like a whimsical kind of we're just throwing this out there idea. This whole idea has been in the hopper for 5 years, and we've been saving aggressively every year because we knew that this year was coming, the year that we were going to spend more than we maybe brought in. And that had never happened in Horizon's history. And with some more contribution might never happen. We might still meet this. Then we could be really excited about what we do with the excess that we've saved, and that would be really fun to think about. But we're going to be paying a mortgage and utilities. There are some renovations that this building needs. And I know probably if you raise your hand and say what's the most important thing, we'd have 15 different ideas, and we don't have the money for all of that yet. But we're going to slowly, little by little, take some steps to kind of upgrade this space and to try to make it more I know Mark did a great sermon on hospitality. We're like, we want this building to be not just for us, but for others who are not here yet, to find a place, to find a home, and we want to gear the church to kind of feel that way. And really, to meet the mission that we feel like we're called to, we need to adapt the building so that it serves us better in that mission that we're called to. We don't want to shift our mentalities to say that now we're all about the building, because that's not healthy when a church gets in that place. But the church, this building, will be a tool for us to reach our mission in the community, and to be really a useful tool. It needs some work, and we want to keep that going. So there will be renovations coming. Now, having said that, we do plan to do some fundraising. We plan to have like a GoFundMe thing. There are a lot of people who were blessed by Horizon who moved away years ago. And I really believe that if we kind of cast this vision in a fun way, we can kind of put our invitation out wide and say, help us continue to be the church in Towson. We are going to be really kind of creative in some of the fundraising that we do in the next season. So we're not looking for just in-house money. We're kind of looking for this to kind of be a bigger thing. But another thing that we, as a leadership, feel very strongly about is we do not want to be a church that sits here and talks about building funds every Sunday. We don't want to have the thermometer. We don't want to have like people giving. We don't want to pass the plate a couple more times to kind of get where we're going. That's not what we want to be about. Like we don't want any guests to even worry about where the money comes from or how this happens. We don't want that to be our focus. So what we are saying to this group, to the committed people, to the people who are bought into Horizon, we want you to have an inside track of what we were doing with the finances, and we want you to hear your voices when we talk about that, so that the other people don't have to worry about it, right? This is the burden that we bear as we try to serve the community for God. And so we're going to kind of undertake some of these things and have exciting ways to do it. And we're going to hopefully other people show up and just be blessed until they grow enough and invest enough that they say, I want to be a blessing to others. And that's the journey that we want everyone to come through in this process. It's in that part of this budget increase is that we are looking to increase Kara's position from 30 hours to a full-time staff person. And when we go full-time, it means some responsibilities like covering covering her insurance and covering things like that. So there's a little bit of a bump there. Let me tell you, a little bit more of Kara's work on this is worth multiples of whatever we're going to pay her, right? Like, let's give her a huge hand. Yeah, absolutely. I'll say this too, though. I think this little gap in this burn rate of what we're kind of like putting out in the building, I think it's going to be met very, very quickly because we have ambitions as we renovate this building that this will be a useful place to rent. We think it could be a wedding venue for the sanctuary. We think it could be used for other kinds of events. We think we could have people meet here throughout the week, things that used to happen before it kind of went kind of unwatched and uninvested in. Kara has an incredible ability to kind of help people help us maximize what the building is going to be useful for as far as bringing money in as well to help balance those things. What I'm going to say is that 2021 might not be that year that we tackle all those things. This is a year to kind of get it ready. This is a year of preparation for the building. We might not want lots of people trudging through until we know that we're on the other side of this vaccine and that we're back to normal. So this will be the heavy year, right? The heavy year that we kind of take on some of the burden before it kind of yields all the fruit. And I think that we just have to see it that way. So we save for that. We're prepared for that. But our long-range plan is not to burn savings beyond 2021. It's to say this building will produce a certain amount of money. The investment in care is going to more than maximize itself in the usefulness and what it brings back. And the building was going to maximize itself in what it brings back. This already happened with what we did with the Blue House. For those of you who know, we bought the Blue House to preserve the Horizon property. We've been renting it out. Guys, next year, part of this budget is going to be met by the Blue House starting to repay money to the church. We're budgeting $5,000 a year that starts to be paid back. And so part of our budget is going to be met by an investment that we already made. We have a cash-producing asset on our property, and we want this to also be a kind of a cash-producing asset. But not just for cash. We want it to continue to be used for NA for free. We want people to have a place where they can go, where they can be safe, where they can get help in a time of need. We want this to be a place that the community can have their homeowners association meetings for free. We want Araminta to be able to use it for free. We want this to be a blessing so we can kind of draw resources where necessary and we can share the blessing to people who need it in our community. We want this to be like the center of our little neighborhood, that the neighbors look to this place as like the town gathering and a place that they can use, and they start to see Horizon differently for the role that it plays in the neighborhood. So there's big visions for that, and it's going to take money for renovations, it's going to take money for staffing, it's going to help us to do these things. So this is where we're kind of going in 2021. So there will be fundraising opportunities coming. There will be building rentals coming. Those things are things we're hoping to do. But here's the biggest thing. We are projecting growth. And what that means is that this works if we continue to grow in our spiritual side of things, so that we become lights in the neighborhood that reflect well. This really works effectively if we grow in number. If we start to draw more people into this church in different avenues, more people are connecting to this building, and this happens if we grow financially, that if we continue to take the steps of faith. If you maybe really went out on a limb and gave 5% of your income this year, maybe God's challenging you to bump that to 6 or to bump that to 7. But I think for all of us, some of us are just making more money in the jobs that we're at. You've gotten promotions. And as we grow in these things, the finances will grow as well. So we're looking at this as a growth all across the board, that we as a church, we're planning to grow. We're planning to be here a long time. We're planning to be a bigger influence in Towson in 3 years than we are right now. And there's no reason not to believe that, because God has blessed us every season and every year that has gone as we've been here. And we believe that that will continue to happen. So that's where we're kind of at as we look for 2021. We're going to have some bigger kind of things. I'm going to tell you about some of the growth things that we're going to do, and an outreach ministry that we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But right now, anybody in the room or anybody on the live stream have questions about what I just said? No problem. Anybody in the room have any questions about where we're at financially or the things that we just talked about? Awesome. Yeah. So that's a great question. First Lutheran has hosted us so generously for so long. They have already made their transition. They're meeting at Concordia. It's a Lutheran school. And so they've been kind of having drive-up services and live streaming services out of there. They do want to come back to have 2 farewell services when all this is over. We will see them again. We're going to bless them with whatever they want to have there, in that sense that they could continue to meet here in small ways to kind of say goodbye to the building. It's been, in some ways, a hard way for their season at this building to end, just with the doors closed up and them not being here. But in other ways, I think it's helped them kind of mentally move on. They're already mentally focused on something else. They're seeing the fruit of where they are now and some of the growth that's already coming from that. So it's kind of like a blessing in disguise in some ways for how their community is transitioning. So yeah, but we are the only ones meeting here right now. So we're kind of getting a taste of unattended renters about to become owners. So, yeah. Any other questions? One question is, do we have a closing date of when we're going? Yes, I should have mentioned that. So we decided, because of the aggressive budget that we set, that we would try to bump. They're willing to close any day now. We originally scheduled it for January. It would have been a month from now. But we decided, because they were willing and they were so gracious with us, that we decided to tweak it just a little bit and say, could you own it through June so that we don't have to kind of absorb all the utilities and all the expenses of the winter bills. So we're going to close in June, so we have a little bit of time, and we can kind of spend some of that spring, summer getting renovations ready for maybe more of a fall. We're hoping by the vaccine's strong and by fall we're back to life as normal. When we want to see some renovations done in the sanctuary, not to change the space, but to have more live streaming opportunities over there so we can expand even who can be in the building watching from different things. So there's a lot of things like that we can work on in the meantime. But June is when we close on the building, and we're hoping for the doors to be wide open for anybody who's coming back in the fall. So that's the hope. All that up for whatever happens. Any other questions? Come on up here, Mark.
Thanks, man. Oh, man, preparation, right? Beth, you did a fantastic job this morning on that. And there's so many things that we're birthing in this next year. And so this is a big season of preparation for us. And so the other thing that we're birthing that's new coming up is a restructuring of our leadership and kind of a reorganization of how we structure things at Horizon, which we've never done before. Just like we've never bought a building before in our 16 years of existing, we've never restructured before, and we're just going to do it all at once. We just figured, why not? Let's just throw it all together. No, it's time. That's the thing for both things. It's Beth talked about how, at the appointed time, right? In the fullness of time. That's how it feels. What we're approaching in this next year for Horizon is one of those moments where it's the fullness of time for Horizon. And so we're going to do a leadership restructuring. If you don't know, let me tell you kind of how we started back in 2004. And it was basically this. We were one link group full of like 20-somethings. That was essentially what Horizon Church was. And we met in the theater, which is now LA Fitness. And mice were running up the walls. It was amazing. There was 20 of us, 30 of us maybe. And the idea was each link group would multiply, and the link group leaders would be on the leadership team. So you see my beautiful little chart here, high-tech chart. This was the idea. If the link group leaders led their small group and pastored their small group, pastored their link group, and then communicated any of those needs back up the chain to the larger leadership team. And then, you know, link groups grew and more link groups grew, and we had more and more people on the leadership team. And the leadership team would gather once a month and make decisions for the church and try to have those be unanimous consent. In other words, we all agree. We didn't really vote. We just tried to work hard to all come to an agreement. And if someone was kind of in disagreement, the group submitted to them, or they submitted to the group, or we worked things out until we could get to a consensus. But that's how we operated for the longest of time. As we continued to grow, more needs emerged. And so this is kind of where we are now. Get ready. This is if you were to take a snapshot of the church, this is kind of what it looks like. There's so much stuff going on. And as you can see, it gets a little complicated gathering 19 people together in a leadership meeting and trying to bring consensus in decision making. It's a very difficult challenge because, you know, we have the kids team, right? We started getting married, and we started making babies, and we started having mortgages, and this is what happens in the life of a church. And then, you know, men's groups started, you know, breaking out, and women's Bible studies, and you can see all the stuff up there, right? The hospitality team, the greeters, the Horizon staff, the events team, the speaking team. Our kids got older, and we started some middle school ministry called Surge, and we bought the Blue House, so there's an LLC group, and all of these are separate teams that gather, the worship team and the prayer team, and now we have a trustees, and it's sort of like, how does all this fit into leadership? Because originally, you were only on leadership if you were a link group leader, but now we have all this stuff going on, and it sort of became apparent to all the leaders, like, hey, we gotta restructure. We gotta rethink how we're organizing ourselves as a church so that we can build for tomorrow, so that we can continue to grow and have the proper structure that doesn't get overwhelmed. Does that make sense? Okay. So Rhonda's gonna come up and kind of share. This is kind of we are now. We had a personnel team to work for months on kind of crafting maybe a new structure. And we want your input on it, but a new structure for Horizon's future. You can grab this mic here if you want. So this is where we're going. Do you want this, or do you want me to click it?
You can use that.
All right,
Your
great,
blue slide
great.
made my heart pound.
Rhonda Sanko, everybody.
So as Mark said, at the beginning of this year, of course, we did not know what was coming this year, right? And so the church leadership team decided there are so many issues that go into growing a body of Christ. And it's always the people-y part that's a little bit challenging, right? And so what we did is we wound up with a subgroup from the leadership team that said, we'll do this deep dive work into the people-y part. What needs to happen so that we can help the people emerge and grow so that we become this light in the community?
Can you move this way just to make sure they can see? Just move your mic over. Here we go.
Is that what?
No, yeah. You want this?
Not really, but anyway, I didn't ask to be here, guys. So anyway, so this subset of people came together, and we've met a number of times, and there's been a tremendous amount of prayerful deliberation, prayerful discernment. Steve has even asked us to fast and pray. So this is some serious business that we've gone through. We've come together, we've brought ideas, we've debated, we've had to go back to the start again a number of times, but we've come together, put things out to the larger leadership team, and that's how we come to be here today. So what I want you to know is that we're midway in the process. So there's been a lot of groundwork done so that we have a structure to bring you, but this is the point where you have the opportunity to participate. So, okay, so that is this is where we are now. What we've done is we said, who is Horizon? And given the opportunity to purchase this church in this young community filled with young people, many of them unchurched, what does Horizon, what are the special gifts that we bring? And who do we need to become in the full expression of who we are? So as we looked at Mark's blue chart, and we looked at our basic DNA, we said, how do we structure this up a little bit better so we get our arms around it, and also so that we can open this up for leadership to emerge? You don't how do we do this so you don't have to run a link group in your living room in order to contribute as a leader, because we have so many skills and talents that belong to Horizon. So the basic categories of these, I don't know if you can really see it, but the basic categories come down to fostering our community and fostering our families, expanding God's kingdom with the locally unchurched, because there's so much that's just rich territory there for the taking. So how do we develop deeper relationships with the Lord within our church body? Extending into the wider world through our missions work, a digital expression of who we are so that we're also able to engage in a way that we haven't been able to before. And then there's also just this sort of basic fundamental operational piece that goes into a really dynamic organization. So we need leadership across the board for all of these things. So the next thing we did is we said, okay, if these are all the things that need to be tackled, what are the characteristics that will be needed for this group to emerge? How do you tell who's a good potential leader at Horizon now? So there was a tremendous amount of work, and the good news is our eyes are all still on Jesus, because that was really what we came up with, that level of leadership. Second best, right? Us. So here's kind of the big buckets that we came up with. So they have to be able to love others really well. They need to clearly lead with a servant's heart. They will need a high IQ. So that ability to connect richly, broadly, and deeply, and express empathy without carrying everyone's burden and burning out. They'll need to be accountable, and they'll have to be able to and willing to follow through on commitments. They will need to be willing to explore ideas that are outside of and beyond their own personal heart, their own personal agenda. Focus on the larger good. So they will need to be clearly invested in the well-being of Horizon. They need to be able to, if they aren't already expressing this, they do need to have the capacity to develop others. One of the things we're needing to do is to build bench strength in our leadership. So this is also, we're looking at this as a leadership development process that will go on for years. This is the beginning moment of this. And then they will need to have a maturity and have a rich expression of their faith. So a spiritual maturity. So those are the kinds of qualities that we're looking for. So the opportunity now that this structure is kind of in place, this is what we're shooting for, what you're looking at on the screen for the church. When you think of these kinds of qualities, we are asking you to join us in prayerful discernment and to begin nominating others. So this is a prayerful thing. This is a serious consideration, because the decisions that we make and that we implement in 2021 will have very long-range implications. So this is not like, you're not being nominated for prom king and queen. This is serious, and we are asking for discernment. So that is the ask, right? This morning, Matt Koch actually opened up a nominations form on our website. If you go to horizon.com or horizontowson, probably .org, .com. Anyway, I have a hot link to it, so I don't know what it is. Anyway, yeah. But if you go there and you go under the resources tab, you should be able to see the actual form where you can go in and you can begin to nominate people. Again, we do ask for prayerful consideration. We're asking that you not self-nominate, so we would love to have people nominated by their peers. The real question is, who do you see leading at Horizon? Who is already leading? So they may or may not be in a formal leadership position, but either you see them leading or you know them in such a way that you believe they should be leading at Horizon to help us take those next steps. So that's the question. The form will be open until January the 31st. All names will come back to the leadership team. We will go into an anonymous voting situation because we have a lot of positions to fill. So there will be conversations with the people that are nominated and voted in. You know, where's the best place to slot people? There are a lot of time considerations for the various positions of leadership. So that's what we're asking for. You've got from now until the 31st. There will be, we are asking for a little write-up, not a write-up, but just a brief paragraph on why you believe this person is a good candidate. So that's the opportunity and the ask.
We're going to do questions on that in just a second, but before that, Ryan's going to tell us about another thing we're birthing in the spring. Do you have that, Mike?
Yeah, I got it. Awesome. Yeah, so like Rhonda said, in so many ways, the executive leadership team, if you will be smaller, but we have so many leadership positions. So, whether you nominate them, whether they end up on the executive leadership team or not, we might need them on the board of trustees. We might need them helping run the business of the LLC. We have so many different things that we are going to need help with. So there's no shortage of how we're going to need leaders in this season. So please nominate. That'd be fantastic. Last thing, and this is just going to be a brief touch on this. I'd love to have greater conversations because I want to let everybody get to lunch and everything with this. But something that we've been working on behind the scenes, a group of people, is a different way of kind of doing outreach from Horizon. And Tom, Tyler, and I, and a whole host of other people who have really helped, both from inside Horizon and from outside of Horizon, who have really helped us dream about how can we be more effective at reaching people who are unaffiliated with church. And we've kind of been dreaming about this thing called Perspectives. And Perspectives is looking to kind of launch possibly on Friday evenings. And it's just a little bit about what it is. It's an outreach focused on reaching people who are unaffiliated with church. It's an opportunity for them to taste and see that the Lord is good, right? So without kind of being overtly over-the-top kind of Christian, we want them to come and experience Christian community, experience kind of discussions about truth, and kind of engage in that in a different way that maybe gives them the opportunity to kind of feel and experience God, maybe in a way that they wouldn't kind of show up on a Sunday morning and just kind of open themselves up to that. And we're kind of looking to do this with high engagement and interaction. It's been interesting just to kind of reflect on what people come to church for in this season, right? Like why do people show up on Sundays? There's a lot of people aren't able to make it. It's just been an interesting process to say, what are people missing when they don't gather and worship corporately? And I think a lot of people miss the community and the worship and the things like this. But I've been really asking a different kind of question. What do people miss about just gathering? What are people in our community hurting for that they would show up for to just kind of experience? And I think it's a lot of the things that we want them to experience on Sunday mornings, but there's a large gap between what they would step into and what they actually maybe need in that. And we're looking to kind of create something that's in that gap, that people want maybe not to be talked at, but they want a chance to share their own thoughts. Great. What's a forum where we can kind of have people discuss things in a more kind of safe, kind of engaging way that they can kind of share their own thoughts and feelings, reflect on different truth, give their own input, and listen well to input of others. And I really think that this thing is going to thrive based on people who are really going to love their community well and invite their community well to engage with it. Here's what our vision for Perspectives is. Our hope is, first of all, what you can do with it. The one thing I'm going to say is we don't want necessarily everybody who comes on Sunday morning to show up on a Friday night when this thing launches, because then it would just be church part 2, right? And we only have so many space. So what do I mean by that? and I'm going to give a little kind of funny story. Dan and I, did Dan leave? Dan, I think, left. He and I, when we were in our 20s, we had this really exciting idea of let's do this happy hour thing, where we were both working for different places at the time, where we kind of go to Bateman's and we invite our coworkers, and they kind of engage, and we get to kind of like have them experience each other and talk about life. And it was really life-giving. A lot of our coworkers came, and then like our link group got wind of it, which was awesome. And then before you know it, 20 of our link group people were overpowering the 4 people from our work. And then like before you knew it, it was just our link group hanging out on Monday nights because nobody else felt like they fit. Like we overwhelmed them very quickly, right? Because it became a very, obviously all these people know each other and I'm on the outside of this group looking in. We're trying to kind of work in reverse on this. We want people to come who maybe have an idea of, I have a friend that I think might come to that, and maybe they would come if I go with them. Does that make sense? But who we want to kind of fill this space is people who are not in this space yet and are disconnected from God or disconnected from community in some kind of significant way. So in that, we hope that we kind of get bigger forums and that more people can come and that we kind of grow at this. But we're in this kind of pilot introductory season. We don't want to overwhelm them with Christians yet. I know it sounds kind of funny. We just don't want to overwhelm them with Christians yet. So we ran like a pilot where we had about like 20 to 25 people in this space. And we were hoping for 5 to 10 non-Christians who came. We got about 5, which was really exciting. And it was awesome. Like their feedback was great. It informed a lot of what we're doing. We had Bryce up here playing music that he wrote and playing music that he kind of got off the radio and then kind of giving some deeper reflection on some songs that had meaning to him. And people kind of thought about those songs and we kind of gave a little bit of a chance to kind of share. I shared a little bit up here, but more conversation starters. And people had conversations at tables. And we saw people who were not Christians really engage with it and give lots of really good feedback. And a lot of them said, this is something I would definitely come to on a Friday night. That's what we're really looking for. So the opportunity of this, like we're really early on in figuring this out. We've been dreaming a lot behind the scenes, but it's yet to be seen how it's all going to kind of play out. But what we would ask is that you would pray for this ministry, that you would pray that we are really doing our work to kind of, like how you want to engage with it most, please pray that we are effective at reaching the people who need to be reached. Like we want there to be tons of opportunities for growth for everybody who's already here, but there's also just an important element for the people who walk right by this building every week, and it's just insignificant to them. And maybe God is insignificant to them, and they just need to have a little bit of an awareness about the way that God interacts in their world. And if this really just triggers a heartstring that you have to say, actually, that is something that I'm just really passionate about and I don't have an outlet for, then let's have a conversation. Because we definitely want people who have in their minds people that they want to invite and like places that they want to bring people. We would love your input on this. I would love for you to be praying for people that you might want to bring to something like that. Maybe it's an opportunity to think differently about your coworkers because you maybe wrote them off as saying, I know they would never come on a Sunday morning. But maybe they would come to something like Bryce Dean rocking out a concert on a Friday night and talking a little bit about life, right? Like maybe that's something they would kind of come to. If that's the case, like we'd love to have a conversation. We'd love for you to be praying about that with people. And then also, we're hoping for a springtime launch. This is all very COVID dependent, right? We're going to try to run another pilot in very small, reduced numbers, kind of like it would be in this room right here. We're going to try to get more feedback. We're going to try to do some more things behind the scenes. If there's enough of a vaccine and things like that to kind of gather in small numbers, even if we could do like a 20-person thing just through the spring, we're hoping to do that. Timeline's going to be very fluid. But that's where we're at, and if you have questions about it, that's great, but that's something that we've been dreaming about and something that we'll be launching new out of Horizon, and we're hoping to expand the umbrella of who considers themselves a part of Horizon. Hopefully, people who don't even maybe consider themselves part of the church start to feel investment and engagement and interaction with this place that leads to really the key thing, which is interactions with the people who go to this church, which will be life transformational, and that's what we're really hoping for in that way. Any questions about anything that we talked about, Rhonda or myself or Mark?
Yeah, Leroy.
I had to write it down.
Good job, man.
The term unchurched, expand on that, what that means?
Sure, I probably shouldn't be using the word unchurched, but what I would say is that people who are not affiliated currently with a church, that they, wherever they are on their faith spectrum, many people kind of see themselves as maybe spiritual, but just not engaged with church on any level. And other people I'd say don't even consider themselves spiritual and just have no interest for what role church plays in their lives. What we're really hoping is to try to find people who are looking for, whether they realize it or not, need a deeper level of connection to a church community in their lives. Well, ping pong.
Can we please explain how the new leadership team will be structured?
Sure.
Yeah, this is an ongoing conversation to whoever asked that. But the general structure is, you saw those categories in that chart. I don't know if we can go back to that chart. But basically, there'd be a senior leadership team, and that would be like 5 to 9 people. And then there would be a layer under that that's more hands-on with, and that would be the team that would make high-level 30,000-foot decisions in terms of the church, where it's going, budgeting, things like that. And then there'd be a layer of leadership under that that's more hands-on with each of these categories. So if you can see like corporate worship, family ministry, evangelism outreach, discipleship, missions and service, operations, that there would be a layer of leadership that's hands-on, targeting and letting that be the focus, each of those categories be the focus of their leadership. And then even beyond that, the sub-teams need leaders, right? So every sub-team in each category needs people taking up the charge of like, that's going to be the place I plug in and serve and lead. So at multiple levels of layers of leadership, we'll need people. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, on some levels, we have a lot of like, these teams have leaders already. The worship team has kind of unofficial leaders, like the worship leaders get together and they make decisions. What we don't have is a great pipeline from like how those decisions go to and from the leadership team. They kind of operate a lot more independently of each other than the fact that usually there is a leader on the worship team on some level that kind of becomes the conduit, if that makes sense. Same with like the kids team. Usually a leader's invested in the kids ministry and they become the one who communicates what's going on back and forth. We're trying to just make that more of a structure, that these teams would still have their own leaderships, but that, you know, somebody investing deeply in that who then represents them on the executive leadership team. Yeah.
In the, that's kind of a two-parter. In the form that's online, is there a like nominating for this ministry or nominating for a certain subgroup that like we're identifying, or is it just like I think this should be a leader somewhere where you just like
It's more open, but it's a box. So if you wanted to put that in there,
You
you
could give more description.
But the ask is a much more general ask. Is this person leading? But if you want to throw in there, and I think they'd be great at arts and crafts ministry, puppeteering, go for it.
Mark, I forgot to say that you can nominate multiple people.
Yeah, on the form, it reminds you, please nominate multiple people. It's just a separate form each time.
Right.
So rather than put all the names on one form, you put one name on, submit it, put the next name, submit it.
I heard your response, but I didn't hear the question. What was the question?
Oh, yeah, we got to restate the questions.
Can you not only nominate people, but say what you're nominating them for? And the ask is a more general ask, but sure, you can throw that in there if you want.
kind of a follow-up from that, will we be able to see this as far as like what the church is looking for in
Oh, so Leroy's asking if they will be able to see a spreadsheet of everything that the church is looking for, of all the leadership positions. I think we should make that available. I think that's something we can definitely.
We can
an
certainly make this.
org chart.
We can certainly make this available.
Yeah.
Understand that for our entire existence, we've been an organic ministry, which means anytime we try to put a chart around it, it's really difficult. It's like taking a picture of a tree. You take the same picture of the same tree 2 years from now, there's been some adjustment, right? So this is our best attempt at organizing something that's very organic. Right. Yeah. There will be emails, there will be follow-up communication. That, like Rhonda said, the team is like halfway through the process. So this is all still evolving as we're finalizing all of these processes. But the point in introducing to everyone right now is to bring everyone in on the process, so that we have plenty of feedback loops. By the time we get to the finished product, everyone has been able to contribute to the finished product.
It also helps us talk about it when there's context to the conversation now. So, go for it, Leroy.
Leroy is full of questions.
Yeah, he's the voice of the audience.
there was a mention of IQ in like looking for
She meant EQ.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, we have always defined emotional intelligence from book Primary Leadership, which defines it as 4 things. One being self-aware, Another thing is then being able to manage yourself, so awareness of self, self-management, awareness of others, and then the ability to manage their relationships in a healthy way. So emotional intelligence looks like this: to be very aware of your strengths and weaknesses, to be able to kind of keep yourself well managed in the sense that you're not kind of flying off the handle in negative or impactful ways, to be very aware of the needs of others and to be very aware of the thoughts and the unspoken things of others, and to be able to manage relationships in a really healthy way. So that's, when we say emotional intelligence, it kind of encapsulates all of that. So.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I was assuming, therefore, there wouldn't be anything for me to.
You are actually
So,
highly emotionally
for
intelligent,
those-
Tom. Yeah.
For those who didn't hear back home, Tom Sanko got really depressed when he heard that IQ was one of the factors. Not true, Tom. Not true. It's EQ. EQ is what EQ. We're going for EQ, not IQ.
No written standard test to be on leadership.
Yeah. Any other questions from home?
Yes, New Beginnings Party. We are hoping to still have that, not in January, because we wanted to do it outdoors. And I don't think I want to be a part of a January outdoor party, so I just assumed maybe to broadcast it to other people. But we're looking at maybe March or April to reflect back on 2020 in a celebratory way. For those of you who don't know, New Beginnings is a chance for us to kind of dress up fancy, and by that I mean look like normal adults, and then and get together and kind of tell stories and tell all the things that God has done in the past. So that's something that we were hoping to do, and maybe an outdoor pavilion venue as it warms back up. Josiah.
I just had a question about, we talked about a top-level tier of leadership, 5 to 9 people.
Sure.
How is that different from the board of trustees? Because I see that under the operations part.
Sure. So he's asking how an executive committee is different than a board of trustees.
The trustees typically in a church is a word that's used for a gathering of individuals that takes care of the building. So the trustees are mainly concerned with some of the things that Ryan talked about earlier, with upkeep of the building, improvements, rent, things like that. Whereas the overarching group, the executive team or senior leadership team, whatever you want to call them, that 5 to 9, they're about the vision, high level on all the different categories.
We already launched a board of trustees in preparation of, it's going to need more people, but in preparation for the purchase. They're making big decisions about how we did the lake. They got estimates. They ran through all that process. They brought those estimates. They gave the recommendation to leadership and made the process for leadership to be yep, that sounds like a good idea. You know what I mean? And we voted for it, right there, as opposed to leadership having to run all the legwork of that. They're going to have all the estimates and all the ideas for how the building needs to be improved. They're going to make bigger decisions on who gets to rent space from here, or they're going to make their recommendations to the executive team on that. So there's a lot of big decisions to make about the building itself. So know this, because I just want to protect them as much as possible. They are incredible people who are doing incredible work. They are going to operate on a limited budget. So when you think that hey, this building is not upgraded, don't take it out on the board of trustees. They are going to do the best with what they've been stewarded with, but we need to grow what the resources are for them to be able to take all the steps that we want to take. So let's trust that it's going to be a gradual restoration process. I think Keith had something.
Yeah, just a suggestion.
Sure.
You've got specific revenue earning ideas, wedding venue being a big one,
Yeah.
that maybe that should be, and multiply that by the number of revenue producing in your development for leadership and members of that team. You don't want to wait till August or September to do a wedding venue when everybody's getting married in June.
True. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Maybe there needs to be a time of looking at these items
Yeah.
and saying, what's our target? Is there a calendar item we need to consider?
Mm.
And we need to target building that team and leadership and members of the team based around whatever you come up with as the target.
Yeah, so those of you who didn't hear, do you want to restate it?
No. That was a lot to restate.
No, so just what he's saying is that we should really be thinking ahead so that we're not kind of hit with things in June when we own the building, that we should, if we want to make revenue streams, if we want to do things like that, we should be thinking between now and then to get ready for that, and I really appreciate that. That's why we launched the Board of Trustees already. so that they are already kind of doing some of the behind-the-scenes legwork. And it's also why we are choosing, even though we're not going to buy the building to June, we want to move Kara to full-time in January, like right away, so that there is this incubation time, this dreaming time that we are already, we kind of have been working with First Lutheran to start to take some of the management of the building off their plate in January 1, even though we're not purchasing the building until June. So we get practice. We got the training wheels going. We're going to try to figure out some of these venues of revenue stream. So thank you for that. That's a great encouragement. Yeah.
And I think it's wise. I think what Ryan already said was true. It's that this next year, 2021, is going to be preparing for that. So it's going to be all the preparations for maybe launching more of that in 2022. But a lot of the legwork is going to go in 2021.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
was there a question in the back? I saw a hand back there somewhere. No? Okay.
Any other questions on the line? People are ready for lunch. I don't blame you. Well, you can talk to us anytime, and you can talk to anybody who's on leadership currently about like where we're at in this process. Please, we want your feedback. We want your involvement. We want your investment. We want your nominations. Like the cool thing is, as we grow like this, it's going to mean more contributions from everybody. We got kind of all hands on deck to kind of take us to the next season. So, do you want to close this out in prayer?
Yeah. Father, we're grateful that you have sustained us through 2020. And we're grateful for just your provision over and over again. You've provided in just amazing ways. And God, we acknowledge that that's from you, and we're so grateful. We thank you for the faithfulness of the people in this community. And God, I just pray a blessing on them, God, for their faithfulness. And Father, as we look to 2021, we ask for your wisdom. God, we need your wisdom. We need your guidance, Lord, as these new things are birthed through Horizon Church. God, we just ask that we would follow your lead in every way. And we just pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.